Hey there, I'm Sarah Zarella, a portrait and wedding photographer and your host for Wedding Secrets Unveiled. This is a podcast where we cut through the complexity of wedding planning, leaving you with everything you need to know directly from the industry experts. If you want to simplify your wedding planning while having fun, of course, you came to the right place. Join me while I guide you through your planning, starting from your engagement to your big day when you say, I do. After photographing for over 20 years, I am sharing with you tips and tricks to cut through the excess noise. Because I believe from the moment you said yes, your planning experience should be a magical time in your life. Here you'll find episodes that are fun, stress-free, and straight to the point with a fresh, honest take on the reality of what you really need to know about planning your perfect day. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. Today's conversation is with Marie Hunt. She's the owner and founder of headpiece.com, which is a really unique niche market. If you are a couple or a bride, or you know someone who's getting married that really wants to wear a statement piece or a unique piece that's one of a kind, that has meaning, she is definitely the person to talk with. She's a restoration company that deals with making and creating unique pieces from some of your own heirlooms. So all of her pieces has stories. Of course, she can create something new for you and from scratch. But if you are in search of wearing a piece, a headpiece, or a veil that has a story and unique and with confidence, this is the podcast episode for you. Well, welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. Well, hello.
Hello. How is everyone?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Can't wait to share some joy of vintage restyle with you.
And I am so excited for our listeners. Why don't you tell a little bit about who you are, who you serve, and what you do in your business, and where you came from, because you traveled in for today.
Oh, yes. Okay, so my name is Marie Hunt, and I'm a bridal accessory designer. And I have a New Jersey storefront in Pompton Plains, New Jersey. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary, and I drove up from New Jersey to come here to Rhode Island to be live on this podcast. And shortly after this, I'll be heading over to Martha's Vineyard for the week. And I serve brides who are looking to have a bridal accessory like no other bride has. So I design modern style pieces and also vintage style pieces.
And actually, how we met, Marie, is you were working with Dan and Catherine, who reached out to you and you reached out to us looking for images from a wedding that we photographed.
That's right. We shared a bride, and she was actually one of the most challenging projects in my entire career. She wanted to use her mom's headpiece in some way for her wedding. Her mother is her best friend, and she just thought it would be a beautiful idea to do. But the issue was that they had opened up the box that the wedding gown was in, and it had been preserved. And when they opened it, they were shocked and devastated to find out that apparently there had been some sort of slow leak in their basement or something, and there was an opening in the box. And when they opened the box, the dress was fully covered in mold. And she originally wanted to take the dress apart and make it into some sort of thing for her rehearsal dinner or something like that. So the only thing that they felt was salvageable was the headpiece.
No, I didn't know that, and it's actually ironic because this particular bride that we had together literally just emailed me before you came in because she had her bridal album, and her mom loved it and she loved it, and so it's funny because we're talking about her and her mom, and I did not know, though I knew her veil and her headpiece and everything was created by you, but I didn't realize the devastation that she must have felt when she opened up that box, because I know how close she is with her mom. I did not know that.
Yeah, so she was actually a virtual bride. So I worked with her through FaceTime, and initially my consultations with my virtual brides start out with maybe like a half hour to a 45-minute consultation where I ask that they have the headpiece by their side. And she showed me the headpiece virtually, and I thought, wow, like, what the heck are we going to do with this? But then I also...
What was it, just covered with mold?
No, it was rusted. It was changed colors. It was gold. It was the rhinestones had film on them. I mean, it was falling apart. It was really in dire shape. And I said to her, well, the next step when I work with a virtual bride is I will never give a quote, or I will never give firm design ideas or anything like that until I actually do a hands-on inspection. So the next step in a virtual consultation would be to mail it to me. So she mailed it to me, and when I got it, I mean, it was just as bad as I thought it looked during our FaceTime consultation. But I did tell her, however, that if anyone can do anything with this headpiece, it is me. So I worked with her on some ideas and ended up totally deconstructing the piece to the point where it had these leaves on them with sequins. The sequins had turned to yellow gold, and we took every single seed bead off of every leaf, hand cleaned all the seed beads, and then we fully replicated these leaves. But instead of using sequins, we use Swarovski crystal because any type of sequin, no matter if it's in a flood or not, will eventually turn yellow over time.
Yeah, I'm actually, as you are explaining this, I just pulled up the album design that we created for her, which I'll have on our episode show notes, so that way for our listeners, they could actually visualize this. I wish we had a before picture. I wonder if you have one.
I do.
So send it to me and we'll put it right on the show notes.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at it. Because keep in mind, as a photographer, I'm just seeing this after what you've created. So, wow.
Yeah.
To know where it came from.
Yeah. So eventually we were going to design a headband style for her. And then after some time passed, she got the idea where she wanted to surprise her mom with some accessories to wear in her hair on the wedding day. And I said to her, well, we really don't want to just start taking away from the design for you to make something for your mom. So why don't we instead just totally change the design completely? And that's where we ended up making a beautiful, gorgeous accessory to go around her chignon style hairstyle. And then she did surprise her mom, I think, at the night of her rehearsal. And it was just such a beautiful story.
I love that. Well, I know we got a little sidetracked, but back to you now. So with that said, obviously our listeners have figured out what you do. Mm-hmm. So you take heirloom pieces, right, and create customized pieces,
right,
for brides to have one-of-a-kind accessories.
Yes.
So, yeah, with that said, tell me a little bit about how you even started.
Okay, so I have been sewing since I was 9 years old, and I took every single sewing course there was that our high school offered, to the point where there were no more sewing courses left, and I did an independent study. And I applied to Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. I majored in fashion design. Intimate apparel was my specialty, and I graduated with honors from FIT. Once I graduated, I worked for a small lingerie company, and then about a year later, I was recruited to become a fit development designer for International Playtex, designing foundations for any young girls out there that don't know what foundations are. They are actually bras and panties. And so I worked for them and absolutely loved it and that was actually in the 80s, because everything was done by hand. So there were no computers, no kind of CAD programs, no kind of anything like that. So when you had a garment, you were actually doing the pattern by hand and grading it by hand. So fast forward, I was married. I got pregnant with my firstborn and had planned to return back to work. And then I didn't have to go back to work. I held the baby. I stayed home. And how I fell into business was people started asking me, friends and family, if I would design their wedding gown, their headpiece, their veil, because I had designed everything for my wedding. And so I ended up kind of doing it as a hobby out of my house for 10 years. And then we bought the domain name headpiece.com in 1998. And that's where everything began. I was, at that point, from my little tiny home sewing studio, I was designing for brides from California to Japan. So the business kind of grew out of my house, but it was kind of not ideal. You know, I had 3 kids by that point, and, you know, if I had a bride coming to the house, you know, I'd be, clean up your toys, you know, turn down the TV. And it got to be a little bit overwhelming, and one night I went to sleep. I had the most intense, realistic dream, and the next day at dinner with my husband, I said, you know, I had this dream last night, and it was so incredibly real, and I felt like I was in the dream, and I told him about the dream, and it was owning a storefront, and in the storefront it had 4 quadrants. The name of the store was Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed, Something Blue. It had a purple gold sign out front. 5 days later, we signed a lease in New Jersey, and I designed the entire store according to that dream. And here we are, 25 years later.
I love that story. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
It just really shows that you're on your journey. Like, it's been laid out, and you're traveling it. And
yes.
Here you are.
Yes.
With that said, though, can you tell me now that we've learned a little bit about your journey, and it's really special because it's a very niche market, so you really have to have a calling for what you do.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what type of pieces you are doing. And I mean, I know it's evolved.
Oh, it's absolutely evolved.
But actually currently right now.
Okay. So I can design anything. If you ask me to design a headpiece out of rocks from your garden, I could do it. I've designed pieces out of sea glass, out of starfish, out of seashells, in addition to traditional, you know, freshwater pearl, rhinestone kind of pieces for brides. But about 2 years ago, I noticed a huge, huge uptick in the amount of brides that were inquiring about vintage. So much so that I started asking them, well, how'd you find out about us, et cetera, et cetera. And
because just so I, not to interrupt you, but just so I understand, so the listeners, you specialize in vintage, right? Like, meaning, like, when I say specialize, meaning you specialize in heirloom?
I specialize in bradal accessories.
Okay.
Modern or vintage.
So it's coincidental that then we met through a bride that wanted the vintage, is what you say. So you'll start from scratch too.
Oh, everything's from scratch. Oh,
but,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is not that your specialty is what you did for this particular bride, taking something old and making something new. You'll do it from, like, start
yes.
for something new too.
Yes.
Got it. But your passion is from taking something from something old.
My passion has always been bridal accessory design, but now my passion is definitely working with brides that are bringing me an older headpiece, and not even headpiece. Sometimes brides bring me their gowns, and I'll design custom veils from parts of the wedding gown. Or I recently designed a headpiece from beading on the shoulder of a wedding gown.
So basically, the evolution of headpiece.com evolved in the last 2 years from the vintage. Got it. Because I knew, I just knew that when I was looking into you and researching you after, we had this bride, I saw so that you did a lot of, refurbishing and vintage. And so I didn't realize that was part of your evolution.
Yes.
That's great.
So the really, really cool thing about it is once I saw this uptick, I started asking brides, and they said, oh, well, I searched this, and I always ask what the search term is. And I searched this on Google, and you're number one. And you're number one, or you're number two. So at the same time, I work with a social media coach, Jen Herman, who has authored 4 books on Instagram. And you can follow her on Instagram, Jen's Trends. And I'm part of her membership, Profit Your Profile. And I've been part of her membership for about 4 years now. And we have guest speakers every month. We have training sessions on Instagram. We have office hours on Instagram. And so during the same time that there was this major Google presence, she had given us a challenge a monthly challenge to do an Instagram reel. And I had only done one about 10 months before that, and it was a terrible experience. It took me 8 hours. This is when they were a little bit more primitive in creating. And I spent so much time on it with little results, and I just felt this is the biggest waste of time. I could be designing a headpiece. Why am I doing this Instagram reel? Well, here we were presented with this challenge, and of course, if I'm presented with a challenge, I accept it, and I did it. And it took me about a day and a half to do this Instagram reel, and we were traveling down to Virginia to see family. I said, I'm just going to press post, and I'm not even going to look at it. I keep my phone on silent all the time. We were down in Virginia enjoying family time, and my phone kept vibrating. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? It turns out that my second Instagram reel ever went viral. Currently, we have almost 700,000 plays on that reel, and I think almost 22,000 likes. This all happened within the weeks that I was getting all of these Google inquiries. Weeks later, my business totally flipped. And now 95% of the designs I'm doing are vintage restorations and restyles. And also, the amazing thing is, I absolutely love my showroom in New Jersey. It's definitely a lot of overhead to keep it, but 90% of my consultations now are virtual.
And though it's interesting though, it's that it's all part of the running theme that you're doing what you're meant to do, because everything's stumbling with you and you're following the path between the dream and now your specialty, which is vintage, which I never realized. That you didn't start there, but you've captivated the market,
right?
All within a couple of years,
right?
Obviously you'll still do something from scratch and something new, but
right.
There's something special about the vintage. It's more meaningful. There's life to the piece.
Well, my motto is vintage restoration and restyle is a love story. So it started with love. It continues with love. There's love in between. There's love that's lost. There's love that you want to continue on. So I think my evolution, is, like you're saying, there's a family history behind every single piece. And I, in restyling it, get to become a part of that family history. And that is so incredibly satisfying. I could design a gorgeous Swarovski piece in freshwater pearl that no other bride in the country has. And yes, I enjoy it. And oh, yes, it's beautiful. But when these vintage pieces walk out of my shop, or I'm shipping them all over the country, I almost feel like I am giving up like my firstborn. Because even though the client is paying for my expertise and they're paying for this one-of-a-kind design, I become so attached to it and have such a passion for the whole process of creating it that, it becomes just as emotional for me, I think, as it does, but in a different way, for the bride and her family on her wedding day.
I love it. So I think what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and when we get back, we should talk a little bit about trends and a little bit more about the pieces that you've been creating, some of your favorite ones, maybe some stories you can share with us for our listeners.
Sounds great.
All right, awesome.
I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you like what you're hearing, I encourage you to check out our website at sarahzarella.com. And don't forget, you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate if you left a fabulous review on Apple Podcast. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support. And now, let's get back to the episode.
Well, welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. So before the break, we were talking a little bit about, your journey and how you got here, and now how you're the queen of vintage. And, just a little bit about why, how you can make every piece unique. But I really want to know a little bit more about what you're actually doing, and talk to me a little bit about the trends.
Whew, the trends question. Okay. I always like to say that I don't follow trends. I create trends. I never, ever am looking on Instagram or anything like that to see what the latest wedding trends are. Because really, my brides, I would say, are not typical brides that follow trends because they want everything to be so incredibly individual and unique. But in the way of vintage restyle, what I will tell you is what I'm doing a lot of is brides will come to me with a certain piece, and we discuss, first of all, their hairstyle. That's always number one. I also investigate. I almost do like a little interview with them. I want to know the venue, the vibe, what's your dress, who's the designer, etc. And so working around basically the hairstyle is where we come up with our ideas. And many times brides just want me to take their vintage piece and create it into another headpiece. But if I do that, what are they going to do with that headpiece after their wedding day? Are they going to pack it in a box like their mother did? So really, what one of my signatures is I will design that headpiece for them, but I will design it in 5 components, 3 components, 7 components, so that it can be assembled on the day of their wedding to appear like a full headpiece. But then that night, they can break it down. They never have to pack it away. They can wear it for their honeymoon. They can wear it on their anniversary if they had a wedding to go to, if they had a formal event to go to. So I think that's something that I'm kind of creating a trend with. The 80s is definite. 80s and 90s right now are so big for me.
I was going to say, it's interesting because I'm sure what you're dealing with fashion is not so much trends right now, because obviously you want to be cutting edge, but it's like trends that are recycling. So because obviously you're being given headpieces that are from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so obviously you have to make it more of a current style, but there's influence. And so what I'm noticing, it's funny because so obviously you have to follow the fashion world, right? Like that's where we're at, right? Mm-hmm. The 80s is, even with dresses, the sleeves, everything, there's so much 80s influence happening right now in the fashion world. It's just interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what it is? They're moms now. That's when they got married. So the vintage pieces that are coming to me are mainly 80s and 90s. However, I have a piece right now that I'm working on from the 20s.
I was going to say, yeah.
And also 40s. I'm really known as the probably top expert in also wax flowers, which I absolutely love to work with. So that's a whole nother branch. But getting back to the 80s, it's interesting because the brides will come to me, and the first thing they do is they well, I don't want the poof on the back of on the back of the headpiece where the veil is, and this, that, and the. And I said, well, don't worry about any of that. You're not going to go down the aisle looking anything like an 80s bride. So what I do is I just strip it down, take all those components. I ask them what components they love. I give them ideas on different elements they can add to make these pieces into something that is current and beautiful, but that when they walk down the aisle, they're going to wow their guests. And in the case of Alyssa, the bride that we shared, she, I did a little interview with her after her wedding, and she said everyone wanted to know where she got her headpiece. No one could believe it was made from her mother's headpiece in the 80s.
A good talking point, because also, too, she had that long veil that she wore with it. So obviously asking her a little bit about, what else are you going to wear? And then in this particular bride, she had a very, very classic timeless dress. So her hairpiece had to be kind of a statement because everything else was very classic and timeless. So, having it, be cohesive that with your whole attire and look good with the veil in, look good with the veil out, is obviously very important components. And then I love the fact that you think about after the wedding day, using their investment again later. I love that.
Well, that's exactly it. It is an investment. This work takes time. Every single component that comes apart from a vintage headpiece, I am in some way cleaning. Some of the biggest obstacles I come across are hairspray damage, oxidation, and also another one of my mottos is glue is the devil. Starting in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, everything was being kind of maybe made by hand, but kind of at a mass-produced level. What's the quickest way we could do it? Oh, let's take this bag of flowers that were imported from China. Let's put it on this frame, glue it. Let's put some wrapping around it. So really, the 80s and 90s, the headpieces were really made of inferior quality elements. So the only thing that's really special about those pieces from their moms is the fact that it was their moms. But really, they wouldn't go out today and buy something that is made that way. So my job is to take it apart and make it look couture. And I happen to do that pretty well, I think.
All right. Well, then let's share some stories about things that you've done pretty well. Is there any stories that just kind of stand out to you that, is fascinating and just nice to hear about the journey of the headpiece?
There are so many. I could write a book about it. There's a couple that are kind of mind-blowing. One is I had a very, very high-end dry cleaner and preservationist call me up, and they were in a bit of a bind. And what happened was there was a granddaughter whose grandmother was on her deathbed. And she was called to the hospital, and the grandmother said, I really want you to have my wedding gown and my headpiece, and I want you to wear it on your wedding day. Well, that's kind of, something really, kind of intense to consider. Well, I don't know if I want to wear it, but it's my grandmother's, etc. Well, this granddaughter didn't even have a boyfriend. So 3 years pass by, and she ends up getting engaged. So they opened the box that they had the gown preserved in and realized the headpiece is missing. But it had been 3 years since this gown was actually preserved. So they go back to the dry cleaner and start talking to them about it. Well, it's been 3 years. They have no idea where this headpiece is. So they call me up and they say, is there any way you can replicate it? I said, well, how am I going to replicate it? I don't even know what it looks like. So the mother brings me the black and white wedding album, where, of course, the quality of the photos in those days, the black and white photos, everything looks kind of almost like blurry to me. Everything was tiny photos. I replicated that piece by comparing the beads, the pearls, the pattern of it to the size of the irises in the grandmother's eye in the photo. And it was spot on. So that's kind of, an amazing, even that, I wasn't restoring it. I was recreating it from scratch. I have another bride who brought me her, I think it was her grandmother's hat from the 50s. And the hat was made out of a really, really fine lace. And what can you make out of a hat that's just a piece of fine, flat lace? Well, I took the hat apart and cut every single piece of lace off of it, stabilized it, and then wired it and hand beaded it and made it into the most amazing back style from a hat. Then I had one other bride who came to me, and her great aunt, I guess, had helped to raise her, and she ended up having a stroke. And this bride-to-be was trying to find someone to restore this crown from, I think it was the late 50s or early 60s, and she searched and searched and searched for months and couldn't find anybody to help her. Finally, someone at work, a coworker, said, well, there's this woman in the city that does millinery. I think she probably could help you out. So she brings it there, leaves a deposit to have this work done. Well, months and months go by, and she hasn't heard from the woman. And she starts calling the woman, and the woman ghosted her. The woman would not pick up her phone calls. And this piece was very, very meaningful to this bride. So eventually she called from her boyfriend's cell phone, and the woman picked up the phone. And basically her crown was being held captive. She then found me, and I said to her, well, how much money are you going to lose on this deposit if you go and rescue your crown? She told me about it. I said, I am definitely the person that can help you to restore this beautiful crown to its original condition from the 60s. So she goes into the city to pick up the crown, and the woman decided to restore it last minute. It literally looked like it was painted with white out. She removed all of the vintage stones and threw them out and replaced them with crummy stones, etc. The bride came to me. I then had to completely strip down this crown down to the bare metal and recreate it by enameling it, finding vintage stones that will be suitable to bring it back to its natural beauty.
You know, as you were saying, your stories are very captivating. They bring us in, right? There's a lot of meaning there. I would assume your clientele, that's part of it, is the stories and the meaning. Like they want to wear something that empowers them with the story that their pieces are holding. You know, so. Stories, obviously, you know, that they're heirloom pieces or vintage pieces, but now stories that they've created in their journey to find you and restore the whole thing is part of the story now, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's special. I mean, you know, obviously on your wedding day, you can walk into a shop and I'll wear this, and this and walk out. Sure, that's for somebody. But if somebody really wants to put something on and feel empowered and impacted by a garment, then they might want to search and for someone like yourself.
Well, that's true, but also you'd be amazed at how many of my brides have lost their mothers. And think about that. I lost my mom 3 years ago, and I'm still not over it. But my mom was there on my wedding day. I cannot imagine walking down the aisle or even doing all of these bridal things without your mother by your side. So, I mean, with my business, I'm telling you, I am booking into the end of 2026. I work 7 days a week until midnight. But if there is a bride who has lost her mom, I will find a way to put an extra day in the week, and I will help her, and I will create something for her. Because that day on their wedding day, it's such an incredible way to feel so intensely, lovingly.
And connected.
Yeah,
connected. On that note, brings us to, I think, our wrap-up question. I don't see how we can end on a better high than that, you know, for what you're doing and creating and putting your talent into the world. You know, obviously you're touching people, obviously with what you're physically making, but also too there's an emotional journey with all of your pieces. So on that note, our wrap-up question. So for our wrap-up question, Marie, what are some key points that couples should be asking restoration companies when they are inquiring to make sure that they are working with a true professional company to ensure that their wedding day is a absolutely perfect event?
The first thing is you definitely want to make sure it's a reputable company. And once you connect with them initially, be careful what you are told. Number 2 is ask questions. How are you going to restore or restyle my piece? Will you be using glue? Glue is a red flag. Anyone with experience in millinery design and accessory design will only be using glue for minimal reasons. And also, number 3 is reviews. Read into the reviews. Look for a story, not just a statement like, you made me feel like a princess. If there's a story behind it, you know there's something good.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Wedding Secrets Unveiled and traveling up here. You helped our listeners become one step closer to their journey of stress-free wedding planning. Can you tell everyone where they could find you?
Oh, well, definitely my Instagram at Headpiece.com with no dot. That's my portfolio. I love to do stories up there about all of these brides that come to see me and their moms, their grandmothers, the pieces that they bring me. I'm starting to get good at doing a couple more reels there. Instagram is definitely my best way to see my work. But also I do write a monthly blog. It always posts on the 14th. The name of the blog is the 14th, so my brides know when they wake up on the 14th of the month, they can go to my Instagram or my website or Facebook to find the story of the month.
And also, too, isn't there something unique happening right now and ChatGPT?
Ooh, yeah, interesting that you should bring that up. But yes, we were doing some research about companies that supposedly do restorative work. And we found out that headpiece.com is the most reputable company when it comes to the way of vintage restoration, restyle, and repurposing. And to add a little bit to that, humbly, I found out that I am the leading expert in the United States when it comes to ChatGPT.
Well, look at you, my friend. Okay, so with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Marie's information on our episode show notes, which you can find on our blog and our website page at www.sarahzarella.com/podcast. Thank you for listening to Wedding Secrets Unveiled. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you something. I encourage you to check out our website at sarahzarella.com. We love photographing while having fun, of course. Check out our podcast page on our website for our show notes along with upcoming episodes with your local wedding experts. Listen in as we help you plan your epic event. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. I would so appreciate if you left a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support and let us know what you think. If you know any wedding experts that would like to be a guest, we have a link directly on our website where they can let us know. Thank you for listening.